Welcome to the Full Dive Gaming Podcast, bringing you a weekly dive of all the news, discussion, and insights you need for virtual reality gaming. This podcast is brought to you by Asterion Products, a top-selling company on Amazon designing revolutionary products for VR, AR, of course, including our beautiful Asterion Aura VR headset stands. Happy Halloween! I'm Jay-Brat, a VR YouTuber and streamer.
I'm Adam Charlton, a software dev who loves game design and VR.
And I'm Kayleigh, VR artist and musician.
Our podcast is here to keep you up to date in the VR realm. We answer questions from our communities, followed by some of the latest, greatest VR news, and then we actually discuss the games we played recently. But due to the amount of massive changes in the industry this last week, we're going to spend some time this week discussing what's coming for VR as a whole in lieu of the game section.
If you haven't seen our YouTube channel, we're all sitting here face-to-face on video calls with each other. We tried this as a new idea last week, and a lot of you seem to really enjoy it, so we're going to continue to it. But let us know if you miss the old VR format, or if you maybe want to see a hybrid in the future. Now, Kayleigh, what questions do we have from our listeners this week?
So we had a question for me from Natty Bratty, who asked, where can we find your art and interact with it in VR? So this is something I'm working on at the moment, actually, and I'm about to make an announcement about it, so that was really well timed. But for the first time ever, I'm going to be uploading all the work that I've done so far that isn't under an NDA to a website called Styly. So that's an online platform where that will house all of my VR creations, and on my account, you'll be able to explore them in a web browser or in VR.
Wow.
But you'll be able to I'm going to put some music menus in there as well. So because a lot of my work is based around these VR music video ideas, and I like the fact that the music is almost like inhabited within that place and it's like synced as one living thing. When you go inside one of my works, the corresponding music will be playing when you go in there, so you can enjoy my music and being in the place and sit there, and hopefully that'll be quite nice for everyone, because so far they've just been on YouTube, so that's quite cool that somebody's asked whether they can see it in VR, because it's so silly really that I do all of this in VR and then a lot of people can't go in unless you go to one of my demos. So yeah, so that's really exciting. So there'll be quite a lot of worlds on there really once I get them all uploaded. So yeah, so on Styly soon.
That's really
incredible.
Cool. Yeah. I hadn't heard of anything quite like that. Do you know yet, is this going to be like you go into VR and you click on this one, it takes you, or is it going to be kind of like that museum we went to where it's like you walk to one, you walk to another in VR? What's the format?
Well, the format on Styly is a little bit different to that. So instead of it being like an app, because it's a bit like I guess like Google Poly in a way. Mm-hmm. That it's got sort of like your models on there, and then but Styly helps facilitate that as an experience. So so you don't have to download anything really nice. Apart from Styly. So it instead of it being like an application where you'll see all the worlds existing in one place, they'll be uploaded as separate files, I guess, but they'll have previews, and there'll be a bit of a bio on each one, so you'll be able to browse, I guess, on an account. So everyone has an account, and then they'll have a list of their VR uploads, or AR. They've got AR ones on there as well. So yeah, it's kind of more separate ones. So I think eventually I am looking into making an app, so where all of my creations are in one space, and you kind of can drift off to one world, but in the distance you can see where another music island would be. I really like that idea. But for now, cool. Styly's a really good way because it's free, and it's such a an easy platform to use for that. So it's really exciting.
Well, that's fantastic. So when is this going to go live?
Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully really, really soon.
Yeah, so stay tuned, and we'll be sure to announce it and link to it once it gets fully released. Awesome. So next we have a question from Beef, and Beef asked, I hear you made the switch. So recently in the last week, I did finally take the plunge and bought a Quest 2 headset. And Beef asked, as an Index user, what was the biggest pain point from the jump from the Index to the Quest 2? Was the quality downgrade significant? And did bending the knee to Facebook leave a permanent mark on your soul? So let's talk about it, right? For me, the Index and the Quest don't even make sense comparing them side to side. I feel like that they're kind of in different environments, because obviously the Index is going to have, better fidelity and better just quality in a lot of different ways. Like even holding the Quest controller versus the Index controller, you can feel like there's a significant difference in quality there. However, I once had to, take my entire VR setup to show off VR to my company. And I ended up carting like 4 or 5 crates of stuff just to make sure it works. And when I went on the trip with Jay, he was able to shove the Quest 2 in a backpack and we had a full VR experience. And so I feel like they're in different markets. It's, if you're playing on games that are Quest native, the downgrade in quality isn't significant, but you're just not able to play as varied as games as you're able to do on the Index. Bending the knee to Facebook, it kind of hurt a bit. I'm not going to lie.
It's a painful thing, but we'll be talking about in the news how maybe that won't be such a thing in the future.
Right. And so we'll be able to get to that more in just a bit. Jay, do you have one last question?
So Scarlet Ibis and Beef both kind of asked good questions around the Facebook change last week. They're renaming themselves Meta and all this other stuff that's going on. So that's why we actually decided to skip the games this week, and we're going to break all that down, talk to you about our feelings on all of it in the discussion section. So that'll come after the news. Hang out for that here in a bit.
But first, we're going to talk about our sponsor today, and that is Asterion Products. So we've talked about them. They've been our partners for a long time, including their incredible Asterion Aura VR headset stand. I have it right here, and I keep getting the urge to come and show it off on camera. For you guys who are on YouTube, see me pulling it out all the time because it just looks real nice. It's good, it's sleek, it's minimalist, and it fits every VR headset stand. You can get it and any other Asterion product 10% off on Amazon with the code FULLDIVE21.
And a little bit of insider information. They actually have just about secured a deal in Europe to start distributing there. So Kayleigh here soon will be telling us about hers that she'll be getting directly from where they'll be at in Europe. And then everyone in Europe who listens to us, you'll have a much easier way to get great VR accessories and not have to pay horrible shipping prices from the US. So good stuff.
Good all around.
Yeah. We touched on it a little bit. So last week, a lot happened. Facebook Connect 2021 happened. Their huge all day long, all week long convention showing off all this stuff. And some huge news. Facebook changed the future of VR. And they said, hey, guess what? We're going to change our name from Facebook to Meta, but we're also going to do something hopefully really cool. We're going to stop requiring Facebook accounts for Oculus devices. And so immediately, of course, this was met with, oh, thank goodness. So many people have not bought an Oculus Quest 2 because of that requirement. But then people started to ask the question online, well, do I have to have a Meta account? And that's how they're saying it's not a Facebook account. What does this actually mean? So what have you heard about this? Kayleigh, is this something that's affecting you yet?
Not directly, yeah, but I was thinking that my initial response to that was as soon as it said, oh, you won't need a Facebook account, we're looking into using just another account. I was thinking you're just going to make another, like, you're still taking the data, like, either way, like, it doesn't matter what it's called. But I understand the brand change from like a branding perspective. I get that, like, 100%, because times are changing. Like the whole XR world is like moving really, really quickly, and I understand like them being like a social networking company that they're going to want to jump on that, and the whole metaverse like umbrella term I think fits perfectly for that, because that's exactly where it's going, is into that realm. So that all makes sense to me. But yeah, with the accounts, like I personally wasn't as irate about. I know some people were really passionately like they were really like not like aggravated by that. But when I got the Quest, I was just too excited about the portability, and you know, like being untethered, especially as an artist, and like looking into performance and stuff like that. Like I was just like so fixated on that. I just thought I'll sacrifice my eye gaze tracking or whatever. You take it all. Like I didn't mind, but I understand like the issue with it. And if they're just swapping that account for another one, like what difference does it really make? So it just depends what they meant by that, I guess. Like I guess we'll find out more like hopefully soon, but personally, like I just wish that you didn't need to, like I understand having like an Oculus account, that made sense, like of course like having an account for anything, but like the social media thing doesn't. I just think you should always have an option. Oh, sorry. Because I know that that's where it's heading, is this metaverse idea that everybody will be able to exist online in this virtual realm and connect with each other. And you would think, well, then you need a social media account for that. But what if you didn't want to use it for that? Then I just don't think you should be able to. You should have to like give up all of that information. So. Yeah.
No, and I think that is the exact reason why they're making the change. In fact, in their sort of press release, the first people that they're testing unlinking a Facebook account from the Oculus account is people with work accounts, people who are using the Oculus Quest in work environments, who maybe don't necessarily want to link, you know, all the projects that they're working on at work with, you know, their angry Facebook rants. And so those are the people that they're starting with unhooking accounts and seeing how that goes. And so I think that plays right into what you're talking about, where there is going to be maybe a social element, but whether or not it has to be linked to that social element maybe remains to be seen.
And why can't it be its own social element? You know, my Rec Room account isn't attached directly to anything, but Rec Room has its own subscribers and the friends networks and favorites and all these things. And you can have a whole Rec Room personality that doesn't have to be attached to your real world person, you know, where your Facebook account typically has real pictures of you. Rec Room doesn't have that. You know, they're trying to protect that because especially when there's a lot of kids on Rec Room, you don't want things like that. Why is Facebook thinking, well, if you're going to do VR, you got to have everyone see exactly who you are? You know, that's not always what people want.
Yeah, I think it should be the opposite. I think it should be more like the Oasis, where you get to like not be yourself. Like, what's the point of going in VR if you're just exactly yourself? Like, well, I mean, I know some people will disagree with that, but like personally, like it's escapism. So I don't know, like that for me would. I know it's like people are like, oh yeah, so meta, like being, you know, but like that's like just being exactly yourself, and then everyone like having that all on display, like all of that information. I don't know, like.
But isn't that the opposite? Isn't that the opposite of what Facebook is going for though? Because it feels like Facebook is wanting this metaverse to be, you know, your real persona just online. Or am I a little off on what metaverse is going for?
No, it does seem like that way. Well, it just seems like they're just shifting like that. Like the interface essentially in the way that you navigate that whole space is just that it's like in this immersive way. But for me, like I think that's where the clash is between like all of us XR users who have these other ideas about how we use that space, and I guess like our identities. And like I guess just having the option would be nice, as long as there's an option, really.
Well, if you can't tell already out there, we're going to get really heavy into this in the discussion. But I will say one thing here. I don't think that's it, Adam. I don't think they want to merge you. I think they want you to stop having a real life personality and just have one online. That's what Facebook's going for. But there's some other news along this huge vein of what Facebook's doing. Adam, you want to kind of brief us on that?
I'd love to. So it's not just a Facebook, the company, that's getting a name change either. Oh no. Oculus is also getting the cut with their name change. They are rebranding Oculus to also be Meta. So all of those Oculus Quest 2 headsets that everyone bought over the last year, including myself, I don't own an Oculus Quest 2 anymore. Oh no, I own a Meta Quest 2, and I can't tell you how much I dislike that name. However, Kayleigh, it sounds like even just from us talking about that last news article, you might be the first person I've met who doesn't entirely hate the name change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's compartmentalization for me. So like, I hate the fact that like it's not going to be Oculus. Like, I think it should stay Oculus. Like, for goodness sake, like especially like I always have like a loyalty to certain brands, and like from where Oculus came from before Facebook, I have like it's a sentimentality thing. So like, but. And just everything that represented, like that completely like changing. It's just more that it could have been a lot worse for me, I think, personally, is that at least they went for something that was all encompassing to do with the premise of it. Like, so it's technically accurate is what I mean. It's not necessarily like preferable. It's just more that like I was pleasantly surprised that like but also like no, but also not surprised at the same time that they've gone for something that was like really relevant, like the terminology basically that they've. But at the same time, I think part of it is jumping on it before someone else does, and being like almost like the first. Like, well, they think they're the first when they're not, but like, do you know what I mean? Like the big like the big boys like taking control and like doing. I just think they want to do the Oasis first. That's how I see it.
But you know, and honestly, with all the money and all the effort that they're dumping into this, they could very well be the people that make the Oasis, and it could just be Facebook's world. I'm sorry, Meta's world, and we're all just living in it.
I hope not. I thought this was kind of interesting information. The first thing I wanted to jump on Twitter and go follow Palmer Luckey just to see him rant about finally the Oculus name dying when they, everything about Oculus, what it originally was, I feel like is now almost fully gone into Facebook's idea of what they wanted Oculus to be, with the name being the last little bit of that. It hurts my feelings a little bit because I felt like Oculus was one of the biggest names in it, and now it's kind of absorbed into this huge company. But I've said it before on the podcast, you look back at the video gaming world and there was names from the beginning that none of us have ever even heard of now. So it's evolution, it's what happens. But also the name Oculus is just a good name. I feel like
it's such a strong one. I loved it for that reason.
And Meta, I mean, we'll get into that in the discussion, but I just, Meta's not the right name in my opinion for so many reasons. But we got the whole discussion for that, so I'm not gonna open that can of worms.
But one of the things that we might talk about though is that a lot of their new headsets names make sense with the rebranding. So one of the things, and I don't know if we're going to be able to talk about it too much just because we don't have a lot of details. One of the things that they did announce was their new headset, the Cambria, and the Meta Cambria doesn't sound that bad of a name. So like the Meta Quest, I think it just sounds terrible. It just sounds horrific. Yeah. But the Meta Cambria, that actually has a somewhat decent name to it. It has a really good ring and a good flow. And maybe they're just trying to lead off of that.
They're trying to, and there's the Nazare is the other project. These are still project names. We'll probably get a different name when the headset actually launches, but I'm sure it's something that will be the Meta. Gosh, what if they just name the headset the Verse?
that would be a bit too on the nose there.
I feel like Meta is too on the nose, but we'll get to that in the discussion. Along with all the other amazing or annoying, however you feel about it, news that came, I got some news for me personally that's like a super big deal. They said Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is going to be fully brought into VR on the Oculus Quest 2. Now that, along with Resident Evil 4 being launched, these are two of like the top 5 games of my entire life coming into VR. If you're out there and you somehow don't know what Grand Theft Auto is, it's an open world game where you can basically do whatever you want, shoot whoever you want. It's wild. What do you two think about this coming onto, this Meta that is kind of known for censoring some of their games or like trying to play things down? How in the world are they bringing that game into this realm?
Maybe they're just showing that they're ready to play with the big kids in the game industry. Maybe they're showing we're not afraid to. I mean, because GTA, when you're playing it flat, it can have some pretty significant, violence. A lot of it has to deal with crime. I mean, the name itself, Grand Theft Auto, you're breaking into and stealing cars, right? But taking that, and so maybe they're just trying to say, like, yeah, we're backing off a little of the censorship. This is a game that people want to play. We'll let people play it on their headsets.
Kayleigh, do you enjoy Grand Theft Auto games at all? Have you played much of them?
Yeah, I played them when I was younger. I was kind of like had friends at uni who were like on the role playing servers. So I'd be interested to see if and modded for them and stuff. So I'm interested to see whether that they would take that into VR as well, and because it's like an immersive space, I wonder how the Pancake gamers would deal with their role playing servers in VR. Like, because I know that there's a really serious community. Like, you have to apply, and there are lots of rules and things. So I wonder how, I'm really fascinated as to how that would translate in VR, and how people would like react to that, and like whether they would get like really heavily involved in that, because they can, like live out that life, but in such a much more immersive way. So quite fascinated. I'm really intrigued to play it, to be honest. Even though I haven't played it since I was like at school and stuff. Like, I can imagine it being quite good. So
yeah.
But do you think that this is just going to give more ammunition for the people that are already concerned about violence in video games? Because as we know, I mean, a lot of these GTA games were spinning a lot of heads on like the anti-violence in game crowds, and taking it into VR where it feels a lot more visceral and real. Is that going to concern people, do you think?
Oh yeah. I mean, in Grand Theft Auto, you can hire a sex worker. I mean, how...
and now you can do it in VR.
Yeah. How do they approach this in such a way? Because people were getting mad. Resident Evil 4 had some pretty mild censorship, but like some of the weird, awkward things people said, or the weird moments, they took those out of the game. And people didn't like that they, altered this game potentially for a more PC time and place that we have come to now in life. And so it's hard to imagine, how do you take a game like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which has everything? I mean, I think that this was a game that was on the verge of getting an NC-7. That's not what it's called. It's called adult for video games, not NC-17. That's movies. It almost got an adult rating, and they pulled out a few things at the few of the last stops and kept it in that mature game rating. You think about a game that's pushing the envelope like that, it's going to cause some serious head spinning. I'm a little excited to see what happens.
But do we have a date coming for this VR port, Jay?
No. All we know is that they had announced, and now we're finally getting trailers for a Grand Theft Auto Trilogy remastered edition. Wow. So that what people think, that's coming on November 11th. They're probably using those textures, that remaster, for San Andreas VR. So it's going to look really good now, because they already have the game fully redesigned. And so now they just have to bring that into VR, probably not till late next year. Because I would imagine the remastered edition is done, and now they're working on this, or they have been working on it, but I can't imagine it's coming before, early next year.
All right. Well, when it does finally come out, be sure to stay tuned here, and we'll tell you all about it when we get a chance to play it ourselves.
Can't wait.
So we'd like to talk to you a little bit, and maybe a lot of it. We've been talking about it. Let's be real. We've been talking about this full episode so far about all of Facebook stuff. We're going to be telling you more about it. But first, Jay, could you tell them a little bit about our sponsor?
Our sponsor, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, Asterion Products has been with us for a year. They're amazing. They make awesome VR headset stands. They recently launched a VR room mat. If you haven't used a room mat, it helps keep you in place, helps keep you from wandering off and punching someone else in the face that's sitting on the outside. The Asterion Origin, go check it out on Amazon. And if you want to get an extra 10% off on any Asterion purchase, you can use code FULLDIVE21, FULLDIVE21, just like the current year, and save some money on it and check them out.
All right. Well, let's jump right into our discussion topic, huh? We had Scarlet Ibis that we mentioned before ask a question on our Discord, and we're going to rephrase it here because it's going to launch us right into our discussion. Do you think Facebook becoming Meta is going to help the metaverse come to life? Or is this staking a big claim to something even before it gets off the ground? And this, along with this, Beef has, Beef says that metaverse is going to be bad for VR and convince me otherwise. This is such a big topic that it just feels like opening up, the top of a can of a entire station wagon full of worms, and I don't even know where to get started with it.
Well, Kayleigh, you seem like you had some feelings about Facebook taking the name Meta. What do you think about that overall? You said it seemed like an all-encompassing name to jump on in the beginning. So tell us more about your feelings of what they've done and what it means.
I think it was honestly like just another like branding strategy. Like, people are using the term meta a lot more now, and it's become trendy amongst like people who I don't even think really understand what it means. And like, I just have had a lot of young people saying like, "Oh, that's so meta," and I'm like, it's really not what you're referring to. Like, it isn't meta at all. But okay, which I find that really interesting, to be honest, because obviously like terms like that like come in and out of fashion. But I just wonder whether they noticed it, like becoming a lot more profound in these industries, and because in a lot of contexts as well, like with NFTs, and I just think like they maybe realized that the work, like the whole like Facebook brand maybe was gonna I don't know, maybe they felt like it had expired, like that whole, because when you think of Facebook, I will always think of the old like Facebook has always been like, so I couldn't even imagine Facebook like, or Facebook VR, like it just, I understand, like understood it from that point of view, I guess, but yeah, I do think that I don't know whether it would be good or not. I think anything that like involves like a big company, like getting involved with anything, obviously, but I don't know, like I just think it was, I just think them I'm wondering, like them saying, oh, you won't need a Facebook account anymore, is because they're actually going to take over in lots of other ways, and it's like really to like diffuse before something else happens. But I do think that a big part of it is just like getting in there first. I just don't know where the interest really comes. Well, like it does make sense in a lot of way with the whole social networking, but at the same time, like I feel like they're going to do a lot of like acting as though they're like the first ones, when we obviously know there's already all of these like metaverse spaces accessible in VR. So I don't know, really. I don't know what's going to happen.
I think one big thing to take right now is whether you like the word meta or not, whether you use it in your current vocabulary, the word is going to be dead. You take a word and make such a huge entity out of it. I mean, does anyone even think of the word Google as a number ever? Google is a search engine now. You think of it as a massive corporate entity. So now the word meta is probably going to be killed by the fact that Facebook is taking over. Like, just like the word Facebook itself. Facebook initially referred to like a mug book that you would get in college to see what other students look like. No one knows that now. You say Facebook. If this really takes off the way they're hoping for it to, no one's going to be using the word meta as anything but this company, which kind of annoys me because I thought the word meta was a really cool word.
Yeah.
There'll just be another word that pops up that means the same thing as meta that just isn't meta, which is a shame because meta as a word is great.
I just think I'm going to end up saying a lot like, oh, meta, but not that meta. And then like every single time, I'm like, no, I don't mean that one.
Yeah, now people will say that's so meta as referring to something be so terribly bad that they had to change the name. That's the new meaning of meta.
Or every time their privacy is breached, they're like, oh, that was really meta.
Yeah.
I got hacked, guys. It was so meta.
Yeah, Cambridge Analytics. Oh, that's so meta.
Well, the name change is a very small part of this. This is a huge rebranding strategy. And if you watch the Facebook Connect keynote, it's obvious Facebook knows people hate them. They know that people think they have no privacy with them. They don't trust them. And so the whole keynote was basically all of this jargon about how they're going to be this trustworthy company that's doing all these good things. And then they changed their name to Meta on top of it. So they're really trying to break away from that old image. And then also at the same time, I would say taking the name Meta, they're trying to partially claim this metaverse that we keep talking about that is potentially coming down the pipeline. So that's where Beef talked about metaverse will be bad for VR. I don't know if Beef was saying specifically Facebook's metaverse or a metaverse overall. So there's a lot of notes here. Adam, did you kind of look over what Beef thought would be bad and can you kind of summarize this for us a little bit?
I did. And so Beef has a lot of concerns about specifically Facebook and Facebook's interaction with metaverse, where if Facebook is the one that's truly promoting the metaverse, Beef thinks that because Facebook is the one doing it and they have a terrible history of having really invasive data analytics and tracking users and things of that nature, that it's going to poison the well a bit for VR. And, Facebook in their keynote really tried to address a lot of these concerns. But I really think that it comes down to put your money where your mouth is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if Facebook is going to actually start implementing a lot of these things and start regaining the public trust, that's where it's really going to come down to for me, Beef. And honestly, unlinking your Facebook account, I feel like is a big step forward. I know we touched on it briefly, but I really think it's a good step forward for Meta to start trying to say, like, we're going to start being trustworthy with our VR stuff. But they're going to have to show a whole lot more, in my opinion, to really make it feel like it's going to be a place that I can live, because that's what they're envisioning for Metaverse. It's not a place where you go to hang out and take it off, and you go and just to do play this one game or do this one thing, see this one movie, and then take it off. They're really envisioning it as a place where you're going to spend a large chunk of your time in. And before I think anyone would feel comfortable with that, they really got to show that they're worth spending time on. And that still remains to be seen, in my opinion.
I fully agree. What do you think, Kayleigh? Because you've worked with a lot of these different companies. You work with people that, commission you to do different things along these VR platforms. What do you think? Do you think this company can turn over a new leaf and show us that?
I think, well, hopefully, but at the same time, like, how does that just change overnight? Like, I don't understand how you suddenly go from like not caring or caring too much about other things, and then I just wonder where the shift really comes. Like, I'd want to know that it was like the integrity was there, and it was not for authentic reasons. I think for some reason I'm just so skeptical now of anything to do with Facebook that like if like any decision that they make, even if it's like superficially seems good, then it might have like an ulterior motive, which is awful. But like I hope that this like they will reform themselves. Maybe the rebranding was what that was for, but it's the same person in charge, so I just wonder like what epiphany he's had. But hopefully like he's a new man, and like this is a whole new like that would be really, really nice if like they did have a realization that actually these are people that are really passionate about this space. We don't want to abuse that and like take anything away from them. And like fingers crossed. I'll try and be more positive about it.
Well, I think you're fair to be, we judge people off their pasts, and yes, people can change when they want to. But the question is this company wanting to change because they think it's good for their image, or do they actually see that a metaverse is a real possibility that could bring the entire world together in a place where we can all feel safe and have fun and enjoy each other's company? Do they see it as, this huge philosophical idea that it is, or do they see this as the next moneymaker? And we can't really know that, but I feel like them naming themselves Meta kind of feels grabby and maybe even a little selfish, because they want you to have to think them whenever you say metaverse instead of thinking, because like even right now, isn't there already miniature metaverses in VR? Aren't there? There's these communities that we go to and hang out, and they may not give you absolutely everything you can do, but I've heard of, Rec Room themselves. They hold their work meetings in Rec Room. They do all kinds of things in Rec Room. It's not just a gaming platform to them. And as that spreads more, that can change. But Facebook is talking about they made these workspaces, and there was a meme on Reddit about like now the Google executives were all sitting in this Facebook room talking together about their strategies, and Mark Zuckerberg was outside in his VR avatar outside the door listening in. How can a company trust another competitor's company's app to be their workplace? There's a lot of very big questions to this. Adam, you work in the tech field and in the industry. Would you guys ever consider using Facebook instead of Zoom or anything like that?
Not currently. Not currently, just because Facebook has, as sort of a general rule, not been great. But if they can change that, I mean, companies have to trust each other. My company works in geolocation data, which means that to a degree we compete with Google Maps, and we still use Google products. I mean, that relationship and that balance can exist if a company is able to prove that it is worthy of that sort of trust. Facebook right now doesn't have that, but I feel like that if they work with it, they could eventually get there. The name Meta does seem a bit grabby. It would be like in the early days of the internet if someone just named themselves Net, right?
Yep.
It would be weird. It's like, oh, I'm going on the internet. Oh, what do you use? Oh, I use Net. It just feels odd, and it feels like that the name itself is almost a killer for the entire idea. It feels like they're trying to build Metaverse to be this global phenomenon, Internet 2.0, and then they named themselves internet.com. It's a killer, and because of that, Metaverse may never expand past Facebook. And that's my number one concern. Metaverse as an idea is incredible, but it's going to take all sorts of companies in order to be able to build it. And by Facebook naming themselves Meta, they might have killed it before it ever got off the ground, in my opinion.
Yeah, at least the name. Kayleigh, I think you're in an interesting position to have a different take on all this, because all three of us here, we hear the word metaverse and we have, general ideas of what that means and what it is. But you're someone who shares your art with all kinds of people outside of the industry. Someone asked, is a metaverse actually something the average person even wants? Or is this something that these companies are trying to quickly make to just steal all our money and time? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think it is what the majority wants. I don't think it's on their mind right now. But for people like us who are obviously interested in all of that kind of stuff, for me personally, I think the idea, the concept itself is amazing. And it seems like a natural progression for me personally. As soon as I saw Ready Player One, I was thinking, yeah, of course that's going to happen. Even in the cinema at the time, people were looking at the omnidirectional treadmills, going, they don't exist, and I'm thinking, what? They've been existing for years. So I think a lot of these people just aren't aware. So I think they don't know what they want yet, if that makes sense. So it might be something that they want in the future, but loads of people are still learning about this stuff and understanding virtual realms. So even though they don't realize that is essentially what they're doing on their phone with a different interface, I guess, and a different system, it's still I've talked to a lot of people and a lot of people at events and stuff, members of the public that are coming and seeing this stuff for the first time, and they are still trying to grasp it. And I just think that they're the majority, really. We're not.
Yep.
So, and they're I know we're consumers in some ways as well, but we're contributing to it and we're making this stuff. So I think it's hard for us to see it from their perspective sometimes. But I think eventually it makes sense that's eventually what they people that use Facebook and all these social media platforms that, to feel more connected to people, if that's where people's interest leads to. Because at the moment, I don't know whether that's what it's about. If anything, it kind of seems to be going the opposite way, where people so in some ways this might be good for that, because it might be re-establishing the whole point of social media is to be able to connect to people on the same sort of level as if you were with them in person. And actually that's not really happening. With Instagram, there's been so many issues with social media and how it's affecting everyone's mental health. And I think in some ways, because the way it's navigated will be different, maybe that will solve a lot of those issues. But then you just don't know in the future whether new ones will be created that we can't even imagine yet, because we're not in that position yet. But I think generally, I think it's something that people want in the future, but they don't want it right now because they don't know about it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's there's a classic example of I remember when the internet was still, a pretty new construct to the average person, and people oh, the online shopping is going to kill every store out there. And that was completely wrong at the time, because nobody wanted online shopping. It had to become an easy part of their day-to-day life before they accepted it. And now Amazon, you look at it, some people buy everything off of Amazon. They don't even go to stores anymore. But it has to get to the point for those consumers that it actually seems to make their life easier or enrich it. And right now, the idea of putting on a headset and going to work all day in it, and then playing a game in it with your friends when you're off, and then having a call with your mom on it when you're done with that, doesn't sound convenient or fun to them. So those people may be way harder to reach than those of us who are already spending a good amount of time in there and changing it.
But it's not just the people using it either. There also needs to be that infrastructure surrounding it. Like, internet shopping didn't instantly kill off all these big box stores when it came out, because quite frankly, the internet sucked back then. Like, if you
Yep.
try and buy anything on the internet, it was a terrible experience. And it was only when Amazon started making it really good and convenient and easy to use that it really started taking off. And the metaverse is going to be the same thing. And we're living in that time where some people can use their headsets for work. And I mean, Kayleigh right here, she makes art in VR. That is one of her things that she's doing for her profession and for her job, is doing that. And so she can use that headset all day. But for the vast majority of people, that infrastructure surrounding it just isn't quite there yet to make it easier, convenient to use. And so in a couple years, maybe technology or the design decisions around headsets and the interfaces will get to that point, but certainly not in the near future, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope, Beef, if you're out there listening to this, we kind of touched on what you're thinking. I think that the metaverse itself can be very good as long as Facebook isn't controlling it all. but I keep calling them Facebook because I just can't get used to calling them Meta, because then you say metaverse, it doesn't make sense. As long as they're not the ones running all of it, then it's an amazing concept that could change all our lives. But if they try to take control over all of it, it could kill the idea completely. Because people don't want that. They want an open free market. They want an open internet where they can go where they want and do what they want. We've seen that with the internet. When someone tries to control it, the company usually dies, actually, not the internet. So who knows? Maybe it could go a totally different direction, and Meta could take a huge blow because they're trying to steal this all to themselves. I can't predict the future, but we'll be here covering it as it happens.
But with that, if you disagreed or agreed with us in any way, come join us on our Discord server and tell us off, or tell us how we're all geniuses. I much prefer the second. But you can ask us Q&A questions on our server and provide suggestions to determine what we talk about next and maybe what games we talk about. Today's episode was inspired by a lot of the users on our Discord who were having great conversations about Meta and their metaverse. You can become a direct supporter of this podcast on Patreon. And if you're listening to the podcast, consider checking this out on YouTube, where you can see us in our natural environments, our real life face cams. If you're watching on YouTube, consider taking us on the go or on any audio platform that there is, maybe on your commute or while you're working. But as always, thank you so much for listening. And remember, when it comes to VR, you have to dive on in.
Go on in.